de gente que te lo enseña desde la habitación de casa de sus padres y que la única forma que tienen de generar ingresos no es haciendo esto, sino precisamente enseñándote a hacerlo. En mi caso, llevo media vida, casi 15.
In 2009, two vastly different men were trying to prove that they deserved to be the host of The Tonight Show. Back and forth insults, the media in a frenzy, and riots in the streets. This wasn't just about TV ratings, it was about integrity, morality, and tradition. On one side, you had Jay Leno, the #1 late-night host in America for over a decade. Jay's humor was simple and formulaic, which earned him a broad mainstream appeal of typically middle Americans who were perhaps a bit headstrong, people who didn't like change. On the other side, you had Conan O'Brien, the man who had been ravaged by the media, labeling him painfully unfunny and annoying, but became so wildly loved, earning him a cult-like fan base of young people who valued his wacky, risky, and non-conventional comedic style. In 2004, NBC struck a deal with Conan that explicitly said in 2009 Jay Leno would step down as host of The Tonight Show, and Jay agreed to this deal. When 2009 came, Conan hosted the show for a measly 7 months before being forced out by NBC. They gave the job back to Jay Leno. One of the shadiest, messiest, and perfect examples of Hollywood corruption just took place in front of the whole world, and outrage erupted. Today we are going to deep dive into all of the details that led to the most chaotic controversy in late-night entertainment history. Make sure you're drinking water. Since its inception in the 1950s, late-night programming has fulfilled the desire of networks to expand their broadcast hours and capitalize on the economic opportunity presented by a nighttime audience. In the beginning, it typically appealed to adults who worked all day. Now the kids are asleep, and it's finally time to relax in front of the TV. The shows were scheduled every night, Monday through Friday, typically around 11:30 p.m., directly after the local news. The format included interviews, comedy sketches, and musical performances with various celebrities, politicians, and figures. The relaxed, informal setting truly felt like you were just hanging out and having a laugh. Late-night programming got Americans more connected to and invested in pop culture, leading to them wanting to consume more movies, music, and entertainment. Late-night programming has also historically been a breeding ground for innovative comedy, because who wants to watch something overly serious or informational after a hard day's work? Late-night television launched the careers of countless iconic comedians. At one point, it seemed like the only way to become a successful comedian was by getting a spot on Johnny Carson or David Letterman. However, there is one obviously important factor that makes late-night TV thrive, and that's the host. When you have millions of viewers tuning in night after night, in addition to having A-list stars come and hang out, you need to have charm, intelligence, wittiness, someone who can relate to the masses yet have natural conversations with celebrities. Hosting a late-night TV program is one of the most coveted positions in the entertainment industry, and it's typically sought after by comedians. They get to have a consistent job where their comedy and likeness is exposed to millions of viewers every single night. They get to be on the cutting edge of pop culture, which maintains their relevance, not to mention the multi-year, multi-million-dollar contracts. Choosing the perfect late-night host is a big business decision, one that doesn't just impact the network or the comedian, but the entire entertainment industry. And in 1992, television witnessed a major change as Johnny Carson, the most iconic late-night host in TV history, retired from The Tonight Show, marking the end of an era that spanned 3 decades. Carson's final episode was an emotional farewell, watched by over 50 million viewers. When he retired, audiences and the television industry alike couldn't imagine anyone living up to the impeccable standards he set. Replacing Carson would be like sitting on a golden throne in Hollywood. His hard work and diehard fan base would essentially just be given to you. Many expected David Letterman, who had been hosting late night since 1982, to be Carson's natural successor. Letterman's show had been airing at 12:30 a.m. directly after Johnny Carson for more than a decade, so they had very similar audiences. However, NBC chose Jay Leno over David Letterman as Carson's replacement. If you ever need a lawyer, Morgan & Morgan make it easy. All law firms are not the same. Morgan & Morgan is the biggest for a reason, because they've won a lot. Your injury could be worth millions, and Morgan & Morgan don't settle for any lowballs. In the past couple of months, they saw verdicts of $12 million in Florida, 34 times the highest insurance offer, $26 million in Philadelphia, 40 times the highest offer, $6.8 million in New York, 25 times the highest offer. They have over 4,000 support staff available to help you with your case at any time. The best part is their fee is absolutely free unless you win. You can submit a claim with America's largest injury law firm in just one click. You can start your claim now at www.forthepeople.com/Patrick or click the link in the description. Thanks, Morgan & Morgan. In 1992, Jay Leno was a seasoned comedian, well-respected and well-liked by his comedy peers. He was no Carlin or Seinfeld, but he was funny enough for the 80s and 90s. Throughout his come-up, he was a regular on Johnny Carson, whose fan base thought he was hilarious.
That's what you do. You try the jokes out on the road, and then you bring them back here and do them on Monday.
Are you on the, when I travel this summer, they give me a, which I'd never gotten before, the extra mileage or free, what is that?
I'm on the Delta one, the Frequent Survivor program.
However, there is a deeper reason why Leno got the position over Letterman. First of all, it's important that Leno would sometimes host as a replacement for Carson, so he was well known and well liked by the NBC staff and executives. He also did a little bit of spy work around the offices. Leno hid in a closet-like office beneath his Burbank studio to listen in on a conference call taking place among NBC executives. They were discussing who should follow Johnny Carson as host of The Tonight Show, Leno or David Letterman, while they
Design team, come and get your award.
I was diagnosed with thyroid eye disease just a few years ago.
¿Qué me importa?
Bulging eyes were a real problem.
Carajo, me importa.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
argued, Leno took notes on what people thought of him and his show. Best of all, he knew exactly who was for him and who was against him. Through his detective work, Leno knew exactly who to please and exactly what he needed to essentially change about himself to get the job. Rick Ludwin, the vice president of NBC from 1983 to 2012, said dealing with Dave Letterman had become bothersome and draining, and he could be unnecessarily rude to network people, not just me. So did that factor into my decision as to going with Jay Leno over David Letterman? You bet it did. Just like many other jobs in life, whether or not one person is more qualified than the other is not necessarily the deciding factor as to who gets the job. It's how well liked you are by the powerful people who make those decisions. Jay Leno has a reputation for being a great guy, a people pleaser, a humble and kind man. But remember, he also had the inside scoop as to who he needed to impress to get the job. Letterman may have been slightly rough around the edges, but that could have been the reason why he was much funnier than Jay.
I'm not angry. I'm not angry at NBC about this. Not angry at Jay Leno about this. Not angry at you or the Tonight Show about this. I mean, realistically, if it were not for you, I wouldn't have a show, and I wouldn't have socks actually if it weren't for you. And now, if the network had come to me and they say, Dave, we'd like you to have this show, and then a week later they said, Dave, we don't want you to have the show, then you could be angry about it.
Ironically, David Letterman just described the exact situation that Conan O'Brien would be put in 13 years later. Letterman felt slighted by NBC. He had been loyal to them for years and helped keep their ratings up through the late hours of the evening. In 1993, he decided to leave NBC and accept an offer from CBS to host a new show, The Late Show with David Letterman. His NBC show aired at the 12:30 a.m. time slot, and now his CBS show would be moved to the coveted 11:35 p.m. time slot, airing at the exact same time as The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. NBC was worried about competing with Letterman. They knew he had a diehard fan base and would steal viewership from Jay Leno. They even threatened to sue Letterman if his new show was too similar to his old show, but his CBS show was virtually unchanged, taking most of the staff, skits, and comedy formats with him. And now with Letterman gone, NBC had to fill the void of their 12:30 a.m. a.m. time slot. Comedians Dana Carvey and Gary Shandling declined to host a show. SNL producer Lorne Michaels was brought in to develop the new show, while comedians Jon Stewart, Drew Carey, and Paul Provenza auditioned to host. Unable to find a replacement, Michaels suggested a former writer for SNL turned writer for The Simpsons, Conan O'Brien. When Michaels called about the producer-writer job, O'Brien remembers, "It just didn't feel right. I'd gone through this chaotic period, then done The Simpsons and gotten happy. Why would I jump into this situation when I knew whatever replaced Letterman would be in for a bumpy ride?" After he backed out, Conan felt an immediate sense of relief. However, a couple weeks later, Michaels called to offer the position again. I wasn't thrilled. His then girlfriend Lisa Kudrow felt Conan would be perfect for the position. He's the smartest person I've ever met, the funniest person I've ever met, and he's also the best conversationalist. At any party, you can seat him with any group of people and get them talking. Conan convinced himself he was not fit for the job. "No, I am a writer. I just have to be happy with that. They won't want me." At that point in his life, Conan had less than 1 minute of television performance experience. Ultimately, he decided to audition for the show, where you can tell he didn't feel confident with his performance.
Again, thank you for coming.
How could I miss an opportunity like
No. It's not often you get to share camera time with me.
There you go.
That's the end of my mock show. If that's all I ever get, it was a lot of fun. I had a good time.
In a surprising move, NBC offered Late Night to Conan O'Brien, a virtually unknown and inexperienced writer who was about to do a nightly show in front of millions of viewers. Late Night with Conan O'Brien debuted on September 13th, 1993, with Andy Richter as O'Brien's sidekick. In the opening scene, Conan is shown walking to the studio with constant reminders that he must live up to Letterman's expectations.
Hey Conan, Tom Brokaw. I just want to be the first to welcome you to NBC.
Thanks, Tom.
And best of luck to you. Oh, and Conan, one more thing. You better be as good as Letterman, or else.
In the opening skit, Conan proceeds to go to his dressing room and tie a around his neck, setting the tone for his willingness to take comedic risks on late-night television. Viewers were initially skeptical of Conan's comedic style, which was quirky, self-deprecating, and unconventional compared to his predecessor. The show's early episodes were marked by uneven pacing and experimental humor that didn't immediately resonate with mainstream audiences. Conan's nervous energy and inexperience as a performer were evident, leading to mixed reviews from critics. The Washington Post's Tom Shales wrote, "As for O'Brien, the young man is a living collage of annoying nervous habits. He giggles and titters, jiggles about and fiddles with his cuffs. He has dark, beady little eyes like a rabbit. He's one of the whitest white men ever." And back then, a critic's review of a TV show could genuinely impact somebody's career. He was under so much pressure that he had to defend himself on television while being interviewed by Charlie Rose.
Well, I think one thing that's, I wouldn't want to get, I do things, I have tics and mannerisms, and I think sometimes there's a tendency these days to think we've got to get rid of all of those and be just a completely smooth
plastic
performer. And what I think is nice is, no, my voice isn't perfect for TV. I mean, can't you tell? It's there are things about me that aren't perfect for TV. There are times when you can see that I'm just a little thrown, or you can see that I have that I touch my nose, or I do something like that. And sometimes I think, don't get rid of all that. In a way, I think I'm just a real person, and
because it makes you authentic.
Yeah, I think it's real. If this, I say, if for any reason down the road, NBC would decide, well, this show didn't work, I'm proud. I think the humor reflects my sensibility. I think we're going for the music and the guests that reflect my sensibility for the most part. And we're doing the show I wanted to do.
While Conan seemed neutral about the criticism, he would later admit that reading Tom Shales' critique of him was a dark moment in his life.
We get in like this town car, me and my people, everyone is silent. We get to work, and I quietly go to my office, and no one in the office is saying anything, and I go into my office and I shut the door, and I got on the floor and I climbed underneath the desk and just lay there. And at one point, after a while, someone on the show leaned in and saw just my legs coming out from underneath the desk. And then the next thing I know, Jeff Ross our executive producer is just leaning in, going like, "You okay? Everything all right?" And from underneath the desk, I just said, "I'm fine. I just need to lie here under the desk for a while. I'll start having meetings in like 10 minutes." But that to me is like when the needle got to the lowest.
But he hung in there, and toward the end of the 90s, Conan O'Brien slowly started winning over his audience. If Letterman and Leno were for the dads that worked all day, then Conan was for the 90s kids who were staying up even later than their parents to indulge in his wacky humor. Near the turn of the century, NBC had a powerhouse network that consisted of Leno hosting The Tonight Show at 11:35, O'Brien hosting Late Night at 12:35, and SNL on the weekend. Despite becoming a valuable asset to the network, NBC was unwilling to pay O'Brien on the same scale as other late-night hosts. With less than 1 year left on his contract, Conan began receiving offers from other networks, including Fox, who made a considerable effort to lure him away from NBC, interested in his appeal to a younger late-night demographic. News Corporation chairman and CEO Peter Chernin pursued him personally, taking him and executive producer Jeff Ross to dinner on several occasions. Fox intended to make Conan the face of the network with his show beginning 30 minutes before Leno's and Letterman's. Conan would be cross-promoted on Fox's animated programming block and on Sunday NFL games. He was also offered a significant pay increase from $3 million to $21 million. Fox was ready to outbid any network if it meant acquiring Conan. They really believed in him. And while the network did everything possible to sway him, NBC executives were optimistic that O'Brien wouldn't budge and offered him a more realistic deal that included a salary increase from $3 million to $8 million while renewing his contract through 2005. At the time, this decision seemed like a no-brainer. O'Brien's professional advisors and managers pushed for the Fox deal. However, Conan wasn't sold. He, like many comedians of his generation, grew up watching The Tonight Show and idolizing Johnny Carson. Conan desired to be Leno's successor and one day host The Tonight Show, and moving to Fox would make that dream nearly impossible. Conan denied the extremely lucrative Fox deal and signed a new deal with NBC in 2002. He chose tradition and legacy over money.
Here's the other thing. I never made a decision in my career based on money, not once. I'm not gonna lie, it's nice to have money.
Right.
But I've also not had money, and I'm okay with that. I really wanted to keep my body of work. All I ever wanted was a body of work. My body of work is like the most important thing to me.
It's your legacy.
It's my legacy, and I've put so much into it, and I'm really proud of the good stuff. I'm very proud of. And so the idea of leaving NBC on bad terms or leaving and not having access to 16 years of work that I'm incredibly proud of was crushing to me. So I do not regret anything.
However, in 2004, there was an amendment to Conan's deal. This amendment officially promised O'Brien that he'd get to host The Tonight Show after a 5-year waiting period, which would mean that Conan would be essentially passed the torch in 2009. As you can imagine, this put Jay Leno in a weird spot. It was 2004, and basically the network was saying, hey, you're going to be fired in 5 years. By that point, Jay Leno would have been 59 years old, and even he admitted that he should do the right thing and pass the torch over to Conan.
This is not tomorrow, it's 5 years from today, and I want to say I don't think there's a better choice, because, you know, when I took this show over, boy, there was a lot of animosity between me and Dave and who's going to get it, and quite frankly, a lot of what I thought, well, good friendships were permanently damaged. And I don't want to see anybody ever have to go through that again. Because this, you know, this show is like a dynasty. You hold it, and then you hand it off to the next person. And I don't want to see all the fighting and all, and who's better, and nasty things back and forth in the press. So right now, here it is. Conan, it's yours. See you in 5 years, buddy. Okay.
Even though Leno seemed to have the right mentality, behind the scenes he was upset. He compared his removal from The Tonight Show to the end of a relationship, noting that he was loyal and still ended up heartbroken. From his perspective, the decision made no sense. He was still #1 in the ratings and consistently brought in the network money.
Hey, ever tell you what they said to me? I said, I'm #1. Yeah, they said, Jay, we want what's above #1.
No.
Yes, that's my favorite quote.
No.
And I went,
come on.
What's above #1? I said, we're number one. We're winning in every demographic group. I know, but we want what's above that.
Leno is still adamant to this day that he was forced to agree with this deal. He wasn't given any other option. And he did not want to retire. Howard Stern was a guest on Conan's show in 2006 and warned him that Leno would not give up his show in 2009.
I don't see this guy leaving and letting you walk in. And I'm concerned about you.
You're concerned? What about me?
This is a big effort.
You know what? I'm very philosophical about it. First of all, it's many years off. I think it's still 11 years away.
Is it?
Jay will be like in his late 80s. I will be like 75 when this thing goes down.
This is a guy who stares at the wall all day, Jay Leno. He waits to go to work. You know, he doesn't like to do anything but work. I don't even know if he has sex with his wife. I don't know what's going on there. So this is going to be very... What do you mean, comedy fact. Everybody knows it.
They were laughing, but Howard was not joking. Leno is notorious for never not working. Several times, he asked NBC if they would hire a separate writing and production staff for the 8 weeks the regular Tonight Show staff took off, so he could work every week year-round. Beyond the 46 weeks he worked on television, Leno still performed about 160 stand-up comedy dates a year. But as we got closer to the transition, NBC executives began to get cold feet. By 2007, Jeff Zucker started to consider the potential consequences of losing Leno for the network. Around this time, Fox and ABC were showing interest in Jay as private negotiations took place behind the scenes. Now, the normal and expected thing for Leno to do would be to just do what Letterman did in '93. David didn't get the job, so he moved to CBS and got his show at the 11:35 time slot and started competing with Leno. So then in 2009, Leno could let Conan take over and then go to ABC or Fox and still keep his 11:35 p.m. time slot and just start competing with Conan. But Jay Leno did not want to give up his show, and NBC wasn't necessarily trying to kick him out either, which was a recipe for disaster. You see, NBC wanted to profit off Leno and Conan, but they had no idea how to make them both happy. By 2008, Zucker began making attempts to keep Jay. He gave numerous suggestions, including high-profile specials, a Sunday night primetime show, or even a nightly cable show on USA Network. Jay kept denying all offers, and he also had a very special way of never expressing his true feelings. Like, he would never just openly say, "I don't want to give up my show," but instead he would strongly hint at it. Like in 2008 when he said, "When you do what I do, it's sort of a populist thing. So when you're not number one, you really lose." I kind of watched Howard Stern. On radio, Howard to me was a populist. The truck driver the average guy would listen to in the cafe. Truck, the old car that's 50 years old and still has an AM radio. Then he went to Sirius. And obviously, it was a lot of money. But I don't hear him quoted anymore. People don't say, "Hey, did you hear what Howard said today?" And I'm sure he's still doing what he always does, but to me, that seemed a mistake. It seems like Jay is saying that if he left The Tonight Show, he would no longer be number one and would drastically lose his relevance as a comedian and a celebrity. Which is true and understandable why he wouldn't want to be in that situation. Jay often expressed his number one status. He could not stop mentioning it to the world.
Let's start in 2004. 2004, I'm sitting in my office, an NBC executive comes in and says to me, listen, Conan O'Brien has gotten offers from other networks, and we don't want him to go, so we're going to give him The Tonight Show. And I said, well, you know, I've been number one for 12 years. They said, we know that, but we don't think you can sustain that. I said, okay, how about until I fall to number two, then you fire me? No, we made this decision. I said, that's fine.
However, many argued that the only reason Jay was number one was because of the legacy he overtook. The 3-decade powerhouse of dominance built by Johnny Carson that was just handed to him. If Johnny Carson was like Steve Jobs, building the most innovative and revolutionary tech company in the world, Jay Leno was like Tim Cook. All he needed to do was just maintain the empire that was given to him.
Jay was told 5 years ago that it was his turn to give up the driver's seat, right? That is not his bus. That's a 60-year bus that's been driving around the country, the Tonight Show, and if you're lucky enough to get to drive it, when they say, hey, you're done, you give the keys back and you say, thank you, you don't flatten the tires of the guy who comes next.
Jay eventually agreed, again, to give up the Tonight Show. But he didn't leave NBC. Zucker offered Jay Leno a nightly 10
De nuevo,
p.m.
tengo que esperar 30
program.
minutos,
On December 8th, 2008, Leno informed ABC and Fox that he intended to stay with NBC, where he would produce a nightly 10 p.m. variety show titled The Jay Leno Show. And on Friday, May 29th, 2009, Jay Leno did his final Tonight Show. He interviewed Conan and did a respectable handing over of the torch.
Listen, I know you got to get back to your studio because I know you guys are doing more test shows. I just want to say I couldn't be happier. You were the only choice. You were the perfect choice. You have been an absolute gentleman in private and the press. I agree. Conan rocks. Good luck next week, my friend. Jay, thank you for everything.
Leno ended the episode by asking viewers to please give Conan as much support as you've given me throughout the years. But this was just the beginning of the most chaotic and corrupt 7-month stretch in entertainment history. On June 1st, 2009, The Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien debuted to an audience of over 9 million viewers, performing exceptionally well in the highly sought-after young demographics. Ironically, his first guest, Will Ferrell, predicted Conan's early demise on the very first episode.
This is the first show, the first Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien. It's not a.
No, look, don't get me wrong, I'm pulling for you, man.
Yeah.
But this whole thing's a crapshoot at best. We got some shaky studio execs back there.
Okay.
Waiting to pull the plug at any second.
All right.
Critics seemed about 50-50 on Conan's first show. One described him as painfully unfunny, whereas Tom Shales of the Washington Post wrote, "There's every indication that O'Brien will be up to the job of his illustrious predecessors." But as the show aired each night, older viewers gradually began tuning out. Now, this was expected, but viewers dropped so low that The Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien was surpassed by The Late Show with David Letterman, which hadn't happened in about a decade. While Zucker assured Conan that a drop in viewership was inevitable, executives at NBC began to worry. Over time, Zucker became frustrated with O'Brien's performance as what he regarded as the booking of the wrong stars. In June of 2009, controversy ensued after David Letterman joked about